Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast live on Facebook and later on our podcast channels. We're bringing you a rare live show with myself, Andrew Musgrove and Aaron Stokes after a fantastic win for Newcastle against Arsenal up at St James's Park in what was the last home game of the season. We felt only right that we do a little bit of a live broadcast and look back on what was a fantastic game. Everything about it from a Newcastle point of view will live long in the memory. We'll start, Aaron, with the war flags display. Now, listeners to the podcast will know that I talked up how good the atmosphere was going to be and how all the elements would roll into Newcastle United's favour. John Gibson, who's the regular on our preview episode, wasn't so positive. And if you listen to Thursday's episode, I'm going to make sure you regret the comments that he said to me, because Newcastle, the atmosphere was brilliant. Everyone on Twitter, the videos, applauding the great work that War Flags put in. 49,000 files, absolutely some effort. And you said in the Instant Reaction podcast last night, Aaron, that it set the tone. And it did just that, didn't it? It looked like it absolutely rattled Arsenal.
Yeah, 100%. I think from the first minute, it was clear that the Gunners couldn't really deal with St James's Park atmosphere. And, going into the stadium before and, Big River was on the speakers and fans were slowly sort of pouring in. You just got that feel that it was going to be a special night. And obviously the displays were fantastic. We've credited War Flags so much. And, it's just, I think for fans that aren't, Newcastle United supporters, I don't think they can really comprehend the size of the job that they've done this season. They've been absolutely outstanding, not just last night, but the Liverpool game and, pretty much the last 6 months. So what an advert they are making Newcastle United. If players are watching that on Sky Sports last night, seeing 49,000 fans, waving flags, getting the team up, players are definitely going to want to come and play for Newcastle. And I think, players like Dan Burn last night were sort of trying to take it in, and you could see they were lining up for the game and, peering around the stands and thinking, what on earth is this? It's just like nothing the Premier League's ever seen. And, credit the group. And it did really set the tone. And, from minute one, Newcastle were at Arsenal couldn't deal with it. And I think that, the crowd played a large part in that.
The crowd were absolutely superb. It's easy to talk about the cliche 12th man, isn't it? But that's exactly what Newcastle have got. And I think it shone through even more given the fact there wasn't really anything to play for from Newcastle's point of view. Arsenal were coming here knowing they really did need a win, whereas Newcastle, all they really had to play for was to match the standards that Eddie Howe has set. Every match has to be a certain standard, and he said that at full time that they want to win every game, whether it be the very first one or the very last one, and that's a totally different point. But it was just amazing just to see that the fans backing the players in such a way, and that's happened all throughout the season, especially since Eddie Howe has come in, and long may it continue. One of the group last night on Twitter from War Flags tweeted, "What an atmosphere, what a performance, and what a flag display, what a night." And I replied to him saying, "No one likes a bragger." Now, obviously, I was joking. I said, I'm joking. It was epic." And he responded saying, swear word, he said, "Sorry, mate. It exceeded my expectations. Unbelievable sight, that blue star." And the important point there is that, these guys are volunteers. They're Newcastle United fans. They've got personal lives. They've got jobs. One of them, teaches people to drive, and he's got so many other things that he does outside of that as well. And yet he's always at the ground making sure that the flag displays are perfect. And they put in so much effort. And it was great to see them as well get to the training ground on Saturday to meet the players and staff. And that will mean so much to them guys, because they deserve it, all the effort they go through. And then to see it last night, how fantastic it was. They'll be looking this morning at all the pictures, all the videos, looking back at the Sky coverage. And yeah, they deserve every single plaudit that comes their way.
I think that's what makes it more special, is the fact that, the club isn't putting this on. The club isn't funding it. The club hasn't decided to do this. Like you say, this is all volunteers. Everyone giving up their own time to try and make St James's Park a better place for Newcastle to play football. And look, I mean, I did see a tweet from one of the group last night as to, where on earth do they go from here? Because, we've seen this sort of displays get gradually higher and higher and bigger. And now we've done the full stadium. It's, what on earth do they do next? But look, I'm sure, I'm excited to see what they come up with next season, because everything they've done, this year, it's not just the displays that they put on, it's the flags that they choose, You know, the St. Maxim one a couple of weeks ago, you saw how much it meant to them. The big team one last night, you know, in the Gallagher end, they just know, you know, exactly what to put on display for a game. So look, credit to them. They've done a fantastic job, and they deserve every single bit of credit that's going to come to them.
I do know they're aiming for a pulley system like you see in the likes of the German league. I don't know how, you know, short term that is, but that's their big aim, to have one of them pulley systems, which would look absolutely fantastic. So maybe something to watch there. Let's talk about the football, because there was a game and Newcastle. I mean, I felt they would win. I felt the game was set up for them. Did I think they perform at the level they did? No. I thought they would play very well, but they were just something else last night. And yes, Arsenal were rattled, and yes, they weren't at their best, but Newcastle still have to beat what's out in front of them. And this is a young, perhaps naive Arsenal side, but still an Arsenal side they're up there for a reason. They deserve to be up there. So you would have thought, with what's at stake for Arsenal, they would have put in a bit more fight. But Newcastle took the game to them. They, you know, took on the atmosphere. They took advantage of that, and it aided their fight against Arsenal. And it was just a 10 out of 10 performance by Newcastle United. It sets the standard for what's to come as well. You know, Eddie Howe. This is Eddie Howe's Newcastle United. That was it. Those 90 minutes is exactly what we can look forward to, and exactly what Eddie Howe has been trying to achieve and will go on to achieve as Newcastle United manager.
Definitely. I think, bar none, that was the best performance under Howe last season. And when you think we've had that run from December, March, when every single game was key, they had to get out the relegation zone. They were fighting for something. Last night was a dead rubber, really. And yet it looked like Newcastle were the team chasing top four, and Arsenal were the team that had, you know, been on the beach for 4 weeks. So yes, Arsenal weren't at the best, but I think that's because Newcastle, you know, made them play that way. Every second ball Newcastle were winning, you know, every tackle they were winning. Arteta, you know, said it in his post-match presser that Newcastle were 100 times better. You know, they were better in every single department, and I think that's true. And, you know, Howe's a very sort of coy, and, you know, he keeps himself to himself, and he's a bit reserved. But last night he came out and said, like, you know, that was the best performance I've had here. And for him to say that, you know, he doesn't say things lightly. So you can tell that, you know, there was a real feel among the group that, you know, they'd done a performance that they hadn't this season. The standard now is obviously making sure that it, you know, is kept up, and they do it week after week, because, you know,
consistency is key, isn't it?
Consistency is key, and you know, we've had that amazing run, and then you have those games against City and Tottenham where, you know, you take 2 steps back. And I think for Howe, you know, the challenge next season is making sure that these runs are consistent, and you don't have those blips where you're playing so well and that just gets sapped. You know, we were sat here a week ago and it was as if the world had ended. You know, we were slagging every player against City, and we were calling this and that, and, you know, what a difference a week can make. But fantastic performance last night, and I think it just felt like the perfect night. Pre-match, during the match, post-match was just how Newcastle United should be. And if it was like that all the time, I mean, it would just be amazing.
I think the issue against City was, as we discussed last week, was defensively they were just shocking, and they handed it pretty much everything to City on a plate. And, you know, we don't know what happened in the last week, but you would like to think Eddie Howe sat down and pointed out to the players, you know, you were stepping out too quickly, or you were letting your man run, because everything we saw last week against City, and yes, they are at a different level to Arsenal, but as we said, Arsenal are still a very good side. But everything we saw that went wrong against City seemed to have been fixed against Arsenal. The men weren't getting the runs on the likes of Target or Kraft. Dan Burn wasn't stepping out too quickly. And we mentioned there, you know, we were critical of certain players, and last week we were critical of Dan Burn. But he had one of those performances yesterday. Our colleague Lee Ryder described it as, you know, England form. And it was good to see him sign off on such a good performance. And we felt as well that it was a big night for a lot of players. You know, we needed to see something from Allison Maxim. We needed to see something from Callum Wilson, even though he's just come back. You know, plenty of talk about a new striker coming in. We've seen how, I don't want to say the word badly, but, you know, Chris Wood has not performed. So it was a big night for Callum Wilson, and he passed. Even though the goal was an own goal, he was causing chaos in that defence. You know, the runs he was making.
Amazing performance.
Wasn't he just? And it was great to see. And he's the number 9 we've missed. And the one person I want to start with, really, though, is Sean Longstaff, because I think out of everybody,
Yeah.
it really was the biggest game for him. He hasn't signed that new deal yet. It is on the table. Eddie Howe is very confident it's going to get signed off. We think in Sean Longstaff, he's got a decision to make whether he plays kind of third, fourth choice or he goes elsewhere and gets first team football. But that performance last night did two things. One, it goes, oh, Freddie Howe, okay, maybe I have got a first team player here who isn't necessarily just going to be a backup. And then outside of that, it maybe alerts other teams in Sean Longstaff's favour and goes, well, oh, we're there. Maybe we can go and have a little chat with him and see if we can get him to wherever and join us next season. And I thought he was absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, I'm convinced that the Newcastle players listen to this podcast because weeks ago we spent weeks slagging Miggy off. He scores against Palace. Last week we absolutely slaughtered Sean Longstaff, and last night he put in arguably what was one of his best performances in Newcastle shirt. So there was massive differences from City, and just the commitment and the will to win, and the players like Longstaff that were, dying for every ball. We hadn't seen that against City, but him last night was fantastic. He was one of the standout players, and to be fair, I think all 11 played well. I don't think there was any player that you can really single out and say didn't have a good game. But Longstaff, in the first half, when he was just drifting into those positions down the right hand side and sort of playing as a right winger, really, in some points, fantastic performance. Wilson, as we touched on, I've literally just wrote a piece saying that, what a performance to come back from, his first start since December. And like you say, there's going to be talk this summer of marquee signings and big names, but if we can keep him fit for 25 to 30 games next season, what a force, because last night he was just unplayable from minute one, putting White and Gabriel under pressure. And then, across the board, I think they were good. Kraft, amazing. What a turnaround he's had. Target, again, you've got to keep him in the summer for 15 million, I think. Just every single player last night spot on, but credit to Longstaff. And as we've just touched on, it's about consistency now. If he can keep those level of performances, keep sort of drilling them out every 2 or 3 games, then I think that new contract's a good decision. And we weren't saying that a week ago.
Someone in the chat there has mentioned how well Newcastle played in the first half, maybe without really threatening too much, but the stats, 66% possession is something that is pretty much unheard of. That was the first half possession stats for Newcastle. 4 shots on target, 8 corner kicks. They were very good in the first half. 219 passes, 184 accurate passes. We're not used to kind of seeing that with Newcastle. In the games they've won recently, they've always kind of had less possession, less. They've had more shots on goal, but less possession, less passing stats, and yet they've always managed to churn out a win. Whereas here, they were very dominant in that first half. The second half was a little bit different, yet they were more threatening and got the goals. It was a very interesting performance from Newcastle, a very good one. And like we say, it's a sign of things to come. And we mentioned there Sean Longstaff. We can't move on without talking about that wonderful little dink pass for the second goal. He does superb to win it as well. He's quick to the react because the ball's blocked. It's clear. He turns around quickly and then turns back to goal and just takes his time. Maybe Bruno Guimaraes is rubbing off on him because it was a Bruno Guimaraes pass, wasn't it, really?
Just about to say he's been watching Bruno in training because that screen Bruno Guimaraes, honestly. I don't think you would have seen that pass 6 months ago from Longstaff. But like you say, to win that ball, I think he turns Granit Xhaka on the box, effortlessly, and then the crowd were urging him to shoot. And I think he might, in his head, have thought, I fancy a dig here, but fantastic ball. And then I think it was yourself that tweeted, actually, when Wilson gets smothered, how many other players would have absolutely tried to blast that and ended up in the Gallagher? Whereas Bruno, he's calm.
Well, about that, I was about to tweet something else actually before Bruno scored, because just a minute or two before that, Arsenal had gone up the pitch. They'd had an effort or a pass cleared, and Guimaraes raced out from the box, and he draws a foul. And I was about to tweet, he does it consistently. He's just so clever. We've mentioned before how clever he is, just drawing those fouls, which relieves the pressure for Newcastle when they really are under it. And it was needed. And I was about to tweet that out. By the time I got the tweet read out, he'd gone and finished the goal, which, was very, very welcome. But yeah, you are right. The fact that, and we've seen it earlier in the season as well. I can't quite remember against which side it was. where he's just calm on the ball. It was the when the keeper makes the mistake
Norwich, Tim
against
Krul.
Norwich, yeah, and he
Yeah.
controls it, doesn't it, with the bottom of his
And then
foot,
the
and it
dink.
just spins in front of him, and then he thinks, yeah. Whereas most players get a big touch on that, and it puts it towards the keeper, makes it a bit easier for the keeper to get to. And we saw it again last night. He takes his time, puts it in the back of the net. Like you see, most people put their foot through that, their heads, their back and into the Gallagher. Brilliant. And he is such a classy player. And if Arsenal fans were thinking they hadn't missed out on a player, I tell you what, last night, Bruno Guimaraes reminded them, yep, they certainly have done.
You know what it is? It feels like every week we've praised Bruno, and then last night all 11 players have a good game, and yet we're still talking about him as the standout. It just, from minute one, every time he got the ball, the difference he makes. He's picking his head up, he's picking out passes that no one would find. And you know what it is? I think the camaraderie that he brings to the dressing room. I was watching that lap of honour last night, and he's clearly such a big presence in that dressing room. Staveley was on the pitch, and he was the first player that she went and hugged and said, thank you. He's doing this little dance with Jolinton when the song's being sung in the Gallagher. And then there's a brilliant moment on Newcastle TV where Matt Targett's being interviewed, and Bruno gate crashes it and says he needs to stay. So, look, he's not just fantastic on the pitch. I think he's a real leader off it. And if they can sign one or two more players like him in the summer, then, next season's going to be, a very, very good one.
Yeah, let's do as Eddie Howe said. We'll just keep calm and keep the feet on the ground. I'm just looking at more stats here, and we've got so many players above 80% when it comes to accurate passes. And I often do stat pieces, and it's not often you get that many players. You've got Sean Longstaff 90%, Almiron 90%, Byrne 83, Guimaraes 82, and then Shea 84. I know he wasn't on the pitch too long, and then Emil Kraft is there with 79%. There's something, going through this Newcastle United side, isn't it? Where they've improved, and there's a bar to hit, and they are starting to churn out consistent performances. Even when they're not maybe playing too well, you can still see the improvement is there, and everyone's just excited for the future.
I think it's a lot on confidence. And last night, as we touched on earlier, Newcastle looked like the side that were, chasing the top four. It looked like they were the better team, and obviously the crowd helped. But I think just that confidence of knowing things were going right, the crowd was getting behind them, and it's just sort of was breeding that type of performance. As we touched on how he doesn't let up. He said last night that whether it's a home game, an away game, a dead rubber, a pre-season game, he wants to win. And I don't think we've had that, even under Benitez, there was a sense of, right, well, we're going to park the bus and we're going to try and get a draw. Under Bruce, there was very much, okay, this game's a free hit. So I think a lot of it comes from Howe and the fact that he wants to win. And last night there was no, switching off. There was no, let's just see this game out and get on holiday. They wanted to win it.
Well, I was speaking to fans outside the ground beforehand, and I was asking them about St James's Park becoming a fortress again, and were they kind of shocked at the fact that Newcastle were coming into this game with, and I used the term nothing to play for. And a guy turned around and he said to me, but they have got something to play for. They want to win every game. As you've just said there, they've got this winning mentality, which is 100% correct. Eddie Howe wants to win every game, whether it's this one or pre-season against whoever it might be. Every game is one he wants to win. And to have that mentality, to show no fear against, any sides, but to be sensible in it as well, because you can show no fear and leave yourself open and then get absolutely, thumped. But you can show no fear and do it in a sensible manner, which they did last night. It was all planned out and it all worked superbly. You could see what they'd been doing on the training ground. And we mentioned there Sean Longstaff. We mentioned Bruno Guimaraes. Let's talk about Jamal Lascelles, because he's another player where we don't quite know what the future holds for him. We think that we'll go out and sign at least one quality centre-back this summer, which would leave question marks over Lascelles. He came off the bench for Fabian Schär, and a lot of people have been praising him for for what he did. He won 7 out of 7 aerial duels. And at a time when Arsenal were looking to get back in the game and putting balls into the box, it's that kind of performance which you needed from your captain, you needed from your centre-backs, and Lascelles stepped up and delivered it.
Yeah, I thought he was great last night when he came on, and there was a great moment where Odegaard's got the ball in the box. I think it's 1-0. He sits down Longstaff, and then he goes to take a shot, and you've got Bruno and Lascelles both literally racing to get that ball to make sure there's no way it's getting through to Dubravka. And it's that type of like say captaincy leadership material. Yes, look, will assign another defender in the summer? Probably. Does that drop Lascelles down the pecking order? Yes. Is he probably going to be 4th choice? Yes. But performances like last night mean he probably will stick around. And I think what we've seen with Longstaff staying, Dummett staying, Lascelles, I wouldn't be surprised if he's kept this summer. I don't think they'll try flog him. I think he's a good presence to have in the dressing room. Howell want leaders like that. It probably comes down to whether he's happy, like we said with Longstaff last week, is he happy to be 3rd or 4th choice? But for Lascelles, I think he probably is. I think even if he drops to 4th choice, he's been at the club that long. He's got such a presence in the dressing room. He knows he will probably get chances because Shaw's got quite a poor injury record. Burns in and out the team sometimes. But last night, if he can replicate that last night, like all the players have done, then, you wouldn't mind having him around the squad in the summer. And I think he definitely will be kept, even if he drops down that pecking order.
Shall we talk about Allison Maxim? Because he was another man who stepped up, I felt, last night. He seemed to really enjoy just running at the Arsenal defence, and they couldn't handle him. He completed 6 out of 8 dribbles. He was just a nuisance all night. And it's these kind of performances which have been lacking, I feel, in recent weeks, maybe even in recent months. And we need to see more of this next season on a consistent basis if he's going to become, or if he's going to remain part of, Newcastle United. But again, and we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, because like we said last week, we were down in the dumps. This week, we're swinging from the treetops, aren't we, with excitement? So we've got to find a bit of middle ground. But I think the important point is to say is that we saw enough last night from players who haven't been consistently at the top of the game to ask the question, well, whether you did it last night, so why aren't you doing it week in, week out? And that can only be motivation for the likes of St. Maximin, for the likes of Sean Longstaff to say, you know what, yeah, I can do this week in, week out. It's not good enough doing it once every 3 or 4 games. I need to be doing it every single game if I'm to remain part of this journey.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've talked about St. Maximin and how he's probably one of the few that makes it on the team sheet next year, even though there's been talk of him being sold and all that. But last night, I thought he was a real nuisance. And we touched on it before about how the first half, Newcastle were dominant without really, threatening. I thought St. Maximin was probably the standout attacking performer in that first half. He had, Tomiyasu on toast. And I think there's no surprise that the defender, I know he wasn't fully fit, but I think he just didn't fancy another half an hour or 60 minutes of running after St. Maximin, to be fair. And one thing I noticed, and I did say it to one of our colleagues at the Chronicle last night, is that I thought he was moving the ball a lot quicker in that first half. The one thing we moan about him more than anything is that he doesn't give the ball at the right time. Last night, he knew when to beat the man, and once he beat the man, he was either shooting or he was getting a good ball across. With Callum Wilson back in the team, that's crucial, because we saw last week at City when St. Maximin did put the ball in the box, and unfortunately, it was Chris Wood on the end of it. He can be a threat when he's playing the right ball. So, as we keep saying, it's about consistency now. And if he can raise that game, just needs to get that step above, doesn't he? He's one of the standout players. Fans love him. We should be talking about him as one of the best players we've had. It just feels like something's missing. But I think the longer he works with Howe, the better players he gets around him. I think he will improve, and he's still young enough to do it.
Yeah. Callum Wilson, we thought he'd got the goal, but it turned out it was an own goal. But he made the movement, and then he nearly scored what would have been, we'll say, the second best goal of the season, because I'm not sure you would have beaten Guimarães' goal, or maybe even Miggy's. Well, maybe it would have done, but as it didn't go in, it's not really a debate. But that effort from just inside the Arsenal half, which very nearly caught Ramsdale out, very, very close. He's just a different type of player to Chris Wood, a different level, and no disrespect to Chris Wood, but this is a Callum Wilson who, there's no getting away from it, is not match fit. There's not a chance that anyone can say he is 100% match fit. And yet, 70, 75, 80% match fit, let's say. He's just a totally different threat. Yes, it'll go back to the point I keep on making, that I don't think the system's there for Chris Wood. I think it is the wrong system. It's built for Callum Wilson. So that obviously aids Callum Wilson, but he's still got to be at the top of his game against a side like Arsenal. And the other thing about Callum Wilson's performance last night is that when we talk about the summer and the transfer window and who they may bring in, we've got Callum Wilson, who is like this level, top level. And then you think about the player that they'll need to bring in to better that. I mean, that's so exciting for a club that is built on famous strikers. You've got one who is maybe second-tier Premier League striker, on the likes of Danny Ings and what have you, that kind of level. The only level above that is a top striker. It's so exciting, this summer, that they could go out and sign someone who is better than Callum Wilson.
Yeah, he looked last night like he was a £60 million player, didn't he? That was, I think we've talked about how that was the best performance under Howe. I feel like that was probably Wilson's best performance in Newcastle shirt. From minute one, and I mean literally from the first minute, from kickoff, he was putting so much pressure on those defenders, on White and Gabriel. I was like fearing for his hamstrings. He was making that many runs in behind. I was thinking, he can't get injured again, surely. And then he loses a tooth, and he still thinks, no, I'm going to play on here. I mean, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch, fantastic leadership, real captain's performance last night. But as you say, if Newcastle want to go out and sign a striker that's better than Wilson, which they could easily do, and, look at, they have made that a priority, and, they wanted one in the January window, where on earth is this football club going to go? And I know, look, I need to keep my feet on the ground, but that Wilson performance last night was, for me, enough to say, if he can keep himself fit, and it's a big if, given that, he's missed, I think it's 35 games through injury at Newcastle, 6 separate injuries, he's missed a lot of football. If he can keep himself fit, there's no reason he can't be starting week in, week out. I can't put it into words how good he was last night. He was absolutely fantastic. You're sort of torn. It would be a shame in some ways if Newcastle go out and sign a £60 million striker, because I would love Wilson to be this number 9 that, sort of sees out the back end of his career at Newcastle. But at the same time, I think the ambition and the vision of the owners, they're going to have money to spend this summer. And I think, a striker will be top of their list.
Not a bad place to be, though, Eddie Howe, when you go out and sign a top striker and you've still got Callum Wilson battling away to get in the first team. It's easy, it's the easiest thing in the world, isn't it? Competition is key when you want to be the very best. And we can't not talk about Joe Linton either. Player of the season. Just to say that for a start blows many people's minds, but it is thoroughly deserved. He's been absolutely superb. And again last night, an absolute powerhouse of a player. I mean, the assist for the own goal, gets his head up, he bombs forward, puts the ball in the box. It's a wonderful cross. It was going to end up in the back of the net one way or the other. You then had him, just looking to shoot, getting his foot in. He was strong. He was bundling players over. He was tracking back. It was, again, I felt just an all-rounded performance from Joe Linton. And I honestly, we know, they've been linked to numerous centre midfielders. Paqueta's one of them. I cannot see, no matter who they sign, Joe Linton, at least for the first couple of months of the season, if he continues where he's left off, dropping out of the side. And because we talk about consistency and how we need players to be consistent. Now we need Newcastle to be consistent over the season to get higher than just, surviving relegation with 6 or 7 games to go. But Joe Linton has been consistent since the turn of the year as this midfield enforcer. And I know you wrote one of your first pieces was, where exactly does he fit in? I'm going to go out there and say he fits in exactly where he's been playing in recent weeks, and he will be there, starting there, all being well, all fit and healthy come the first game of the season.
Yeah, I mean, if there was any doubt that I mean, there wasn't any doubt, was there, that he's a midfielder. He moved back into attack for Norwich, and we all thought, oh, look, he's bagged too. Sure, drop him back into attack. Last night just showed, we've talked about before, it's hard to really, think of a player like him in world football. that's got the sort of presence that he's got, the the build, yet can carry the ball so well. We've talked about before, it's like the Vieira mold, isn't it? Of 20 years ago. That's the only player that really springs to mind that I can sort of compare him to. Fantastic again last night. I've said it before on the podcast, but I think he does his best work without the ball. He's a big guy, but he hurries players, he presses, he loves a tackle, he loves a scrap. We touched on it last week, but last night there was a moment where he had a little bit of a scuffle with Elnell, and it was so, unnecessary. He just likes riling up the opposition, which
But that
obviously,
wasn't there. That wasn't there before Eddie Howe came in. I don't know what
yeah, it
Eddie Howe's
wasn't.
done to him. Has he been
Yeah,
following around, like poking him in the back of the net, winding him up or something?
yeah,
Because it
just
wasn't
prodding
there.
him, saying,
It
"I
wasn't.
need something out
He
of
looked
you."
like he wouldn't say, boo to a goose is the expression, isn't it? Before Eddie Howe came in, and he has changed this. He's just got that aggressive nature about him now, which if you're going to be a midfield enforcer, because we talk about Patrick Vieira and his long-standing rival and Roy Keane, they all had that bit of bite about them, and it is great to see not just Joe Linton, but Callum Wilson's got it, Trippier's got it,
Bruno's got
Guimaraes
it.
has
I think a
definitely
lot
got
of
it as
them have
well.
it. They've all got it. Well, a lot of them have got it, and I think if they can sign, look, everyone talks about these £60 million players, but if they can bring another 2 or 3 in the summer that have got that sort of, that winning nasty streak in them, then it's going to elevate that team to an even higher level. But that's one of his favourite parts of his game for me, is the fact of what he does off the ball and what he does to try and get in the opponent's head. Sort of against Tottenham, sort of against City, and we saw it again last night. And it was really nice to see. Obviously, he won Player of the Season the other day, and the comments that we saw on social media. I wish we could go back in time to August and sit down and tell ourselves Joe Linton's going to be Player of the Season, because
Well, I
what
think if we went back to August, Aaron, and you said all this is going to happen this season,
yeah,
Eddie
that
Howe's
was
going to come
true.
in, the
Mhm.
takeover is going to happen. You're going to sign a £40 million midfielder and Bruno Guimaraes, and you're going to survive the season comfortably. I think a lot of people would have laughed at you. So,
And
but
you're
yes,
gonna have the owners on the pitch at full time kissing out on deck. I think, yeah, you would have been
yes, there's a
you would
lot of
have been
surprise.
relieved. Yeah.
And we will get on to things off the pitch in a moment, because there was a lot of things that happened last night off the pitch which we have to talk about. But great to see Joe Linton in this transformation. And if you haven't seen the interview yet on the Newcastle United website, where he's on the pitch and obviously everyone's doing the lap of honour, and you can hear the fans serenading him, he's just smiling. Like, yeah, Newcastle United need to pause that moment, and you can print off that moment, and you will make a bomb of money, because this smile, I think, just will warm the heart of every Newcastle United fan, because he now can speak good English as well, which was just helping. I think he's settled with his family, and he's just loving life, and it's great to see him, absolutely buzzing. It is really, really good to see. We're going to talk about off the pitch. So let's start with what you mentioned there. We saw Amanda Staveley, Jamie Rubin, Midad Gadusi all go around the pitch at half time. They then joined the players at full time for the lap of honour, hugging everybody. We saw everyone getting a hug. And there was also Anton Deck on the touchline as well after the final whistle, waving one of the war flags. I'm hoping they returned it. I hope no one had to chase them down Barrett Road saying, give that back, but they seem to enjoy themselves as well.
Yeah, and I mean, look, when on earth have we seen that? Geordie favourites being invited onto the pitch, being invited into the director's box. Just another little sort of touch that the new owners have added. But Staveley, obviously on the pitch last night, as I touched on earlier, she went straight up to Bruno, big hug, very long conversation with Sean Longstaff, very long chat with Joel, and she was, really sort of getting the views of the players, congratulating them. Howe said after the game that, they've been supportive from minute one, and there was a moment last night in the press conference where we asked about the owners and what they've been saying, and one moment stands out for him, is that after the Cambridge defeat, they came in the dressing room and they were saying, it doesn't matter, we'll get past this, and that support that they've had, even in the dark moments. I mean, there hasn't been many, to be fair. I mean, I think Cambridge is probably the only real, dark moment we've had since Howe came in, but that support that they've got and the love that they've got for the club, and they can tell they care. Staveley last night, throwing a scarf in the crowd and singing along with the E-I-E-I-O chant, like, just a world away from what we're used to. And I think long may it continue. But just to see, everyone pulling in the right direction again, you know, it just makes you so excited for what's going to come next season.
100%. And, you know, they seem to be just really loving it, don't they? Like, and just the way the players are responding as well. You don't often see the owners get on to the pitch, and they'll get some criticism from certain elements, but they just want to be part of this. And I think that's what makes it all the more special, that, you know, this isn't just a you know, a reputation kind of thing or a money thing. They seem, you know, from what we've seen so far, to really just want to enjoy it kind of as a football fan in many ways.
I think what we've seen, obviously, look, cynics will say that some of it is PR, you know, coming on the pitch and all this, and, you know, are they just doing it for the optics? But I think, you know, I was at the women's game last month, and, you know, Steve having a kick about on the pitch at the end with her dad and her son. There was no cameras around, you know, there's no TV cameras. It wasn't on Sky. They just love football. And, you know, I think Newcastle United put out a good tweet last night that Stave, you know, she tried to buy the club for so long. She never gave up on the club. And now she's sort of just enjoying having that chance. And but look, last night felt special after the game. You know, it was that moment when everyone was walking around and you're just thinking, you know, this sleeping giant's about to come alive. And there was a funny moment in that press conference after where, you know, Howe was asked about Ant and Dec, and he said, you know, I'm glad I finally met them. It's my highlight of my day, and, you know, I'm a big fan of them. And it's just, you know, nothing like we've ever seen before. You know, it never happened in a Bruce or Rafa or Pardew or Carver or any of those managers. You know, we've never had this sort of feeling of the camaraderie or the, you know, togetherness of not just the full group, but the local celebrities as well. So it just goes to show, you know, the changes that have been made in the last 6 months and how exciting it is for the future.
And we're going to finish with the NUFC fans food bank. Jamie Rubin and me dad Gadusi before the game made a very, very quick and surprise visit down to the volunteers at the food bank on Strawberry Corner. Let me play you this video. If you listen on the audio channel, you'll hear Jamie and you'll hear me dad. So just bear with me. And this is them heading down and meeting the volunteers.
Thank you for what you're doing. Amazing what you're doing. Amazing. I'm going to keep buying and buy a hot dog if you don't mind. For all the money, yeah, exactly. This guy's been phenomenal. Really is phenomenal. It's been so much different. Sorry. We're saying thank you. Hello. He's been one of our neighbors. Hello, how are you? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. So it's amazing to go. Can we get a round of applause for the food bank? This is really amazing. You start on the corner, you collect some money, and then when we go last Can we get mad? Come in. Leave me a while. All right. Thank you very much. Well done, man. Thank you. What are you doing for my big man? Yeah, exactly. I still thought we were doing that. You got on I got it. I got it behind you. I haven't seen the strawberry. Kind of keep out the football. Yeah. Get your picture taken. Go on. Thank you. Good chance, guys. Thank you very much.
I mean, Aaron, I could see your expression there off camera as you were watching that. I assume that might be the first time you've seen the video, and you were just smiling, and you were like everyone else there that was surprised and just overwhelmed by the fact these guys came down, because, you know, Jamie Rubin's foundation has matched every home donation since that game against Spurs, which means well over, collected with the fan donations, well over 100,000, if not close to 150,000, has been raised for the food bank, which at a time like we're in now, cost of living crisis, is unbelievable. Going into the summer with no football, it all is going to mean so much that they've got that backing from the Reuben Foundation. Now, he could have sent an email. He could have just sent a quick selfie video. But instead, he's come down for the second time now, because he did it before the Brentford game. He's come down for the second time now to say thank you. He's brought me a dad with him down who wanted to come down to say thank you to the volunteers. And we saw them getting pictures with them, saying hello to one of the volunteers, who I believe is called John Joe there, who's in the wheelchair. And it means so much to every single volunteer that these owners are doing this, and some will say, well, it's an easy PR spin, but okay, in a way, maybe, but it's also a very expensive one at that cost, and if that is their main aim, because it hasn't been a cheap PR spin for Jimmy Reuben, if that's what people think it is. What it is the owners taking an interest in the community and making sure that Newcastle United is at the centre of that. But it's not just about the football. It's about helping the most vulnerable, making sure those who are unfortunately going without food, making the decision whether it's heating or eating, that they can actually have, the support to not have to make that decision, and they can actually have food on their table and not go hungry.
Yeah, that was the first time I'd seen that video, but I mean, just puts a smile on your face, honestly. We knew when this takeover happened, we've seen it in Man City to an extent, that not only does the football club get bigger and start winning things, but the community around it benefits. What the owners will do in the next 10 years with the City, God only knows, but what they've done this season, like you say, fantastic. I don't think it's a PR stunt. And, look, even if it is, like you say, the money that they've spent, to help people in this community it's just unbelievable. And I think not only are they going down there, like you say, they're posing for selfies, even last night after the game, Murdad, he's interacting with the crowd, and just helps add to that feel-good factor that's around the club. And I think they deserve massive credit for what they've done with Newcastle United, but if they continue to keep up these initiatives and stuff like that, and the jobs that they're going to bring to this city, it's just an absolute wonderful time. And yeah, fantastic to see that, and long may it continue, and I'm sure it will.
It ended with a mass selfie of about 70 odd people, because all the fans wanted to take selfies and they were very accommodating. And then it was a mass. I looked up and there was just like 12 phones pointed in this big group. And so if anyone's actually got that picture and they've posted on social media, do let us know, because we'd love to see it. And I'm sure Jamie and me and Dad would as well. What a way to round off the final home game of the season, Aaron. We are falling over ourselves in positivity. We look ahead to Burnley to close off the season. We'll have our match preview with John Gibson on Thursday to look ahead to that one. But just to finish off, Aaron, how excited are you for next season, and more specifically, what Newcastle United can achieve at St James's Park?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever felt like this about Newcastle United. I think a lot of fans watching or listening to this will have came away from last night thinking we can't remember it being so good. You probably have to go back to Keegan era to have a time where the sort of optimism was as high as it is. I'm excited for the next season. I'm excited for the summer. I think the owners will have big plans. I think how, he hinted last night that he's got plans that he's looking to implement. And I think we're in safe hands with both him at the top and the owners at the top. And look, who knows where we're going to be next season. This time next year, we might be talking on the last home game podcast thinking, if we made it in the top 10.
Right, okay, right. Yes, I'm I'm chinning to Gibbo now. I'm just trying to keep you calm.
No, I know. Honestly, look, last week, like I said, we were down in the dumps last week saying that, it was all doom and gloom. And then, a week later, I
think it was all justified last week. I'm just happy that, it was all, as we said earlier in the show, all kind of fixed and remedied. And we saw the best of Newcastle United against Arsenal. And hopefully we'll see that on Sunday against Burnley. And long may it continue into the seasons to come. But Aaron, thanks very much for popping on to Everything is Black and White podcast. You guys watching and listening, thank you very much for tuning in. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. If you're listening on the podcast channel later, please remember to like and follow the podcast through your podcast provider. Totally free to do. Just means with every new episode we upload, you'll get a notification to say it's ready to listen or download, and leave us a rating and review as well. Just helps us get the show out to a wider audience. And pop over to chroniclelive.co.uk, where there's plenty of brilliant content from last night, including Piers Morgan's reaction to Arsenal getting beat by Newcastle United. Well worth a look. and much, much more. So do head over to chroniclelive.co.uk.